Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the St. Catharines Heritage Advisory Committee Designation Subcommittee meeting for Friday, December the 8th, 2023. It is now 2:04 p.m. and we have quorum. So I'd like to call the meeting to order. And we'll begin by this gathering by acknowledging the land on which we gather is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabeg peoples, many of whom continue to live and work here today. The territory is covered by the Upper Canada Treaties and is within the land protected by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Agreement. Today, this gathering place is home to many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples. Acknowledging this reminds us that our great standard of living is directly related to the resources and friendship of Indigenous people. With that, we'll move on to today's agenda. Do we have any additions or deletions for the agenda?
I don't think there are any unless there's anything Robert and Brian wanted to add. Okay, then I think we're good.
Okay, and so may I have a motion to adopt the agenda? Anyone? Robert, you guys are going to be doing a lot of motioning duty today. So motion from Robert. All in favor? Okay, so that carries. Move on to the. Oh, sorry, I didn't read the motion, but is that okay?
Yeah, it's okay. You don't need to read the motion. It's all right.
Yep. Now we move on to the consideration of the minutes from the previous meeting, which was September 15th, 2023. Does anyone have any questions, comments, or recommended changes? No? All right. Everyone being satisfied, can I have a motion to adopt the minutes of the meeting? Okay. Yeah. Brian enthusiastically moves that the designation subcommittee approve the minutes of the meeting held on Friday, September 15th, 2023. In favor? And that carries unanimously as well. Are there any declarations of interest for this meeting? Seeing none, we move on to item 7.1, which is a project update. And for this, I think the plan is we just maybe can go around the table and have each of us talk about our own progress in terms of our assigned properties and go from there. Does anyone like to start that?
I could maybe give an update first on how Holly and Mark are doing.
Great.
So Holly let me know that she's a little behind right now. She, depending on how everybody else is doing, she might need a little bit of help. But I also explained to her that because I'm evaluating each property, all 60 plus. So we'll at least have one evaluation for all of them, and hopefully we'll have at least two for all of them because you three will have also done some, and so has Mark. So if there are properties that some people aren't able to get to, it should still be okay. If we have two evaluations versus three, I don't think that's a huge difference. But yeah, so I let her know that's the case. But she also said if anybody wanted to volunteer and take on a couple more, she wouldn't be opposed to that. So we can talk about that as part of this, and we can send her an email and let her know. And then Mark, unfortunately, as mentioned, is laptopless at the moment, and so he isn't able to, or all of his evaluations were on his laptop. So I think he's restarting, and so see what kind of progress he's able to make in a short time. So, but yeah, that was unfortunate. So.
No, definitely terrible. Robert, would you like to go next?
I submitted, I attended all the properties and submitted the rubrics for all the properties assigned, plus another one at 38 Geneva Street that was requested that I take on. I did not keep copies of this. I sent everything as I did it. I submitted them to the city. So, I mean, I remember everyone, but but I submitted them all as I attended the property. So it's getting into a pretty dicey season for taking on more work. But if it's essential that we do a couple more, then I suppose I could take those on, as long as everyone is satisfied with what I've done today.
Mm-hmm. My guess is we probably should wait until we see the next little while everyone submits, and then see maybe we can identify where there's gaps, and if there are some where we have one or I think where the goal was to do two plus you, yes, James, for each. If we have a case where we have one or none, maybe distribute a shorter list of the ones that have less, and then jump on those, because once I'm done, I'd be happy to help with that as well. Having said that, maybe if you have more time in the next couple of weeks than you will have after Christmas, maybe we could get a jump on that. What is it, your status on
Well,
that?
the Christmas from about from now until Christmas, I should be in a better position than I will be between Christmas and New Year's. Once New Year's out of the way, then I have a little more freedom. But I know that James was anxious to get this done by Christmas, so that's my reasoning for trying to get as much as I can in before then. So
Yeah, I think
Do you have a short list of some, do you think, James, that are going to come up short, maybe?
I don't know which ones Holly hasn't been able to get to. Done the same thing as Robert and has submitted the ones that she's completed, and I think she has about 10 done right now. So she's making progress, but she still has another, she's only halfway there, right? So I don't know which ones she feels like she can't get to, but we can sort that out. I was also going to say that my goal, was to have everything done for around Christmas time, so that way after the Christmas break when I get back, I'll be able to just go in and start tallying, because it's going to take some time to score all of these and translate everything to scores. And then the goal being that I would have a list, the prioritization list for everybody at our January 19th meeting. So it does leave us, though, with about 3 weeks after the Christmas break to between Christmas and that meeting to add the odd property if we need to, right? So I'm not opposed to that either. That's certainly easy to incorporate if we need to. Yeah, but it will take some time to do all the tallying. So because 60 properties times 2 or 3 evaluations each, it adds up, right? So
yeah. Okay, well, through the chair, I'm fine after New Year's until that meeting, that scheduled meeting. So I can certainly cram in as many as possible in that period. It's the period up until New Year's that is a little difficult for me. I've got meetings and things like that before Christmas, appointments and things, and of course there's shopping and everything else. So it makes it easier if I can move into January, no question.
So maybe the way to start is to help out with things that Holly's having a particular trouble with, and make those available to Robert, and then he's got something he can jump into as time allows. Does that make sense?
yeah, I think so. I think I'll reach out to Holly after the meeting, and I'll let her know. And I'll extend it to Mark as well, because we don't know how far along Mark is going to be able to get. But I think what we'll tell them is get as far as you can at Christmas time, and then send us an email to let us know which properties you haven't been able to get to, and then between the group, hopefully we'll be able to tackle them and get those sorted out. But yeah, I think there isn't an urgency, I think, to get them done over the next 10 days or so. I think if we're able to get them done, as long as they're done for the mid-January meeting, then that's okay, because there's a lot of properties and whatnot, so it's going to take some time anyways for me to get to them all in terms of evaluating. So if stuff is coming in during January, that's not a problem.
Okay. Ryan?
Yeah. If we need help with, helping out to Holly and Mark, my Christmas vacation technically starts on December 13th. And then I'm off until January 2nd, so I can probably chip away at a few of them during that period of time. That being said, I have all of my evaluation forms filled out, with the exception of the St. Paul Street or St. Paul Crescent properties that Andrew, you just, were purchasing. I didn't do those because, James, you didn't think that I had to really do them.
Oh, you're
You're on mute.
Yeah, so I'm not sure how much Andrew wanted to discuss that today, in terms of those properties, but yeah, as part of this project, I don't think we need to evaluate them or include them in the evaluations. So yeah, I would just set those aside, I think.
But out of all the properties that I did, just to talk about a couple of them, there were like 3 properties that were like super interesting, that really jumped out for me. The little one, 4648 Lake Street. What a little gem of a house. And I'd like to do a little bit of land registry research to try to figure out who the builder of that house might have been. Because I've got it narrowed down to one of 2 individuals, but it would be nice to be able to say, yes, this is the John Smith house or the Bill Black house or whatever. But it's a really nice little place, and I just wonder if the that beaded grill porch surround, if that's actually an original to the house. I mean, I don't think there's too many people in this day and age that can replicate that kind of, grill work that's on that building. So if it is original, I mean, boy, that's a real rare survivor from that period. Number 97 Albert is a really interesting house. And I don't know, James, if you can go back into any files that I would have sent to Chloe, because that house was the Frederick Parnell house. And I sent a photo to Chloe I think I sent a picture of him, Frederick Parnell, posing with his top hat, and a picture of the house that I have in my collection. So which kind of shows that the side porch that's on the house now looks exactly like the side porch that was there when Fred Parnell owned it back in 1905, 1910 kind of thing. So if you don't have those pictures, if you can't find them, I can resubmit them. And then one of the other houses that was like just super interesting is 260 Vine Street. It's, I think, got to be the only Tuscan villa, like Italianate style house that's in the city. Yeah. And the nice part about that is that we know that in the 1920s it belonged to Antonino Puccini. He was the macaroni king of the city, Mm-hmm. And he was using the old Ridley College building, or the old Springbank Hotel building that was later became part of Ridley, as his macaroni factory until it burnt. So that was a really, really interesting house. And for me, that's one of the top priorities, I think, for listing is that particular structure.
Sorry, which building was that? Which house was that?
260 Vine.
I'm just sort of looking these up on Google Maps as you mentioned.
It's on the east side of Vine Street between Carlton and like where Niagara and Facer and Vine come together.
Just like a door south of Carlton Street on the east side.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, that is a unique
well set back.
And I don't know if there's if when we're doing this listing, if we should be taking other things into consideration. Right at the corner of Vine and Carlton, like directly north of 260 Vine Street, there's a little cut stone survey marker from Grantham Township, and it's one of the few that I know of within the boundaries of the city that is still in place. And it would have been cut and carved probably, I don't know, maybe in the 1840s, 1850s. And on the one side, it says concession 5. And I think on the other side, it says something like lot number 12 or whatever. And that's sort of like, should we be thinking about listing or designating little things like that?
That's
Yeah, I
pretty
think,
unique and special for sure.
yeah. Do you know the address roughly, or do you know what was the intersection that it's at?
The little cut stone.
Yeah,
It's right at the corner of Carlton and Vine.
Carlton and Vine. Okay.
So
You
if
can see
you
it on Google Maps, right? Yeah, it's right there.
yeah, so if you go if you can see the 260 Vine on Google and then just kind of follow down the street, it's like it's right there. I've got a picture of
Oh
it.
yeah.
I can send it, if you want, but it's like it's such a rare, unique little survivor from the township days.
It's one of those things that at some point someone's going to replace that sidewalk and not know what it is and just
Hmm.
pluck it out of there.
Yeah.
So
That's
Now,
the end of
the
it.
interesting part about that is when you go along Carlton Street, the other side of the Canal Bridge, and you've gone past Avondale down towards Town Line Road, there's two or three of those identical cut stone markers out that way, showing that it's, part of, Concession 5 in Grantham. Of course, now it's part of Niagara on the Lake, so it's nothing that we have to worry about. But it's interesting that these few survey markers, like imperial period survey markers that I've seen, are on Carlton Street. But that might be something that, we could consider at some point.
that's a good point. And even getting out there and taking a look and seeing if there's any others hidden in bushes or whatnot along there would be smart. Those are really the survivors are pretty remarkable. So yeah.
'Cause I think Niagara on the Lake, they located some of the original stone boundary markers, like the Ordnance Board boundary markers for the military reserve and for the town of Niagara from like the 1790s. And they just actually recently located another one of them, and they made a big deal out of it.
Mm-hmm.
So if they can do it, so can we.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, my list of properties I was planning on during my Christmas vacation or leading up to it, taking these forms and just transferring the information to the electronic sheets and sending them into to James.
Mm-hmm. Good.
And like I say, there's a few of these houses that I've done that I would like to do just a tiny bit of land registry search on them because I'd like to know who the builder was.
And
It sounds
what
like
was
they're
the-
like, oh, sorry, go ahead, Robert.
What was that number on Lake Street that you thought was interesting?
Um, it's 46 Lake, but when you look at the house, it's numbered 48.
Okay.
Yeah, it was a weird thing. Everything that I have says 46, but for some reason there's a 48 on the house. So it's but we're all talking about the same property, so that's good.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, and actually that property on Lake, it's interesting because when I was trying to do the boundary or proposed boundary for the downtown heritage district, this was one of those properties where it was kind of there wasn't much else around it from a heritage perspective, and at some point you have to kind of draw a line, right? And
Mhm.
concerned about how many properties were included within that boundary area, I thought, well, it's one property, and we could look at it as part of this project, and if it looks really good, then it's probably going to be designated anyways, right? So that was
Mhm.
my thinking with it, but it was definitely a property that I looked at and thought, should it be in the boundary? I'm not sure, and I went back and forth on it. So, but it is a neat little house. So,
Um,
So it's north of Welland Avenue, is it?
Welcome, Mark.
South of Welland.
hi, Mark.
Oh, thank you.
Um,
We're sorry to hear about your laptop issues.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I did manage to get like I took a day yesterday because I used a digital camera to upload photos. So I went yesterday and took another bunch of photos, and I got 15 done anyway. Not like the deep dives I didn't do because I had my other notes with my laptop bag, but I've got 15 based on what I know about the properties and smaller dives and just the conditions and the appearance of it right now too. So
Okay, well that's good to hear.
Yeah.
We've sort of been going around talking about everyone's progress report, so that's good. Are there any particularly challenging ones or any particularly interesting ones you want to point out that you can think of?
Yeah, if why is it you guys have talked about all yours already?
I haven't done mine yet, but go ahead.
Okay. Well, the there's one interesting one. It's the first one actually. It's the old Riordan paper mill on Merritt, 29 Merritt or 219 Merritt, I think it is.
Mhm.
And the one thing about that is that it doesn't really have like a it's not big in the community of what it's doing right now, but it's attached to like the keg, right? It's the same style of building, right? You know, it still has that old Grimsby limestone or bloodstone, people call it. Some people call it red sandstone. So it ties in that corridor. And I think that corridor has potential to be something bigger than it is if we keep that heritage aspect alive in that part. You know, that even though the building isn't as taken care of as the old as the keg, right? The old that old rubber factory. Um, it's still connected in a way, you know, hasn't been restored as well, but it needs to have some restoration. It's in need of restoration in localized areas of that building too.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah,
but it's
that's one that's on my list too. That's really a pretty remarkable building. It is a shame that it's a little modified and a little obscured from the road, but it does look pretty special. I'd love to get in there and nose around a bit.
that's right, and see the condition on the inside, like how
Yeah,
much has changed, how much is compromised
yeah,
structure wise, right?
yeah.
And with the additions in the front, that's the one that's most interesting because it's such an old building. It's very rare to have those kind of buildings standing right now. So um, I don't know. What do you guys think of that one?
I haven't. That's one I haven't sort of looked at as comprehensively yet. But for me, it's one I'm anticipating it's going to be a high priority one
Yeah,
for sure, based on what I know so far.
Yeah, and I think I did an evaluation of it a couple weeks ago, and I don't know what my score was off the top of my head, but it probably is one of my highest rated ones, I think.
Mhm.
The stone masonry work is just fantastic. It's unfortunate that things like the windows have been definitely changed over the years, but
yeah,
the bones are still there, right? And it's a fantastic building from that perspective. And so I think it definitely is something that for me is probably going to rise to the top of my list or close to it. Um, and I think what we're going to have to do as part of the next step, and when we actually start, doing research and designating these properties, like we're going to have to talk to the owners, right? And make sure that they're on board and make sure that, there's a conversation that's had, right? And so the opportunity potentially for us to go on site and explore these buildings a little bit more and see what they are actually like in person. Hopefully we'll have those opportunities. And it's a tough job sometimes convincing owners to go this route and allow for a designation and whatnot, but this is a special building, right? It's a very unique building, and so hopefully the owner understands that. But we'll cross that road when we get to it. But I have a feeling it's probably going to be on our prioritization, at the top of our prioritization list. So
right. Yeah, I had I think with that one, it was high. I think it was well, I think I have like a 40 on that one, but I think it can be higher, really. Just with a little bit more of a background on like how many other businesses were in there that made a difference in industrially in St. Catharines, because that was like I think without that building having a big connection to like the Welland Canal, um, uh, Port Dalhousie as well. And I don't know. I think it's worth diving a little deeper into that one. But
Yeah, I think I had some information where the paper that they produced at one point was actually used by the Globe newspaper in Toronto, so the precursor to the Globe and Mail. So, that's a big thing as well. And so yeah, so I think that's definitely going to be a property that we're going to look at again in a lot more depth. So yeah.
And for the chair, may I have that number again, the street number on Merritt?
It's 219, I think.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, take a peek on Google Maps, and you're also right too, Mark. It's sort of part of a historic industrial strip,
Yeah.
which contextually, along the canal really contributes, I think, to its value. So that's one I'm interested in as well.
Plus, there could be a lot of archaeological concerns around that building too.
Any others you wanted to highlight, Mark, before we move on?
Well, if we're talking just a highlight, sure, there's other ones that I'd like to talk about too. But the Glendale, like the old rubber factory, that one specifically, like that one in 344 Glendale, to me, that's a near perfect assessment, if you will. I don't think anything is perfect. I think if it was perfect, it would still be run on its initial use. That's how I'm looking at it, right? If it's continued to, like, if that company stood the test of time, right? So it was near perfect. It was definitely in the 50s for me on that one, because I think for the most part these days, when we talk about heritage, we kind of look more in the past of people, like significant people that were associated with the building. I do think it's important to note Nino Donatelli's involvement in a lot of heritage projects in the area today. And I would say that would be considered, I know this is kind of like a big statement, but that's like some living heritage today, that he will be in the registries and history books of someone that has taken care of and restored many historic buildings that we care for today, cherish today.
No, I agree. I think it's important to recognize those things, and they're often left out of the consideration.
Yeah.
And
I guess
that's
that one would be a highlight, to answer your question there.
yeah, that's another one that's on my list as well, and I agree 100% with you on that one. Okay. In terms of my own properties, I haven't submitted any yet. I've got a number of them finished. I just have to do a little photography tour and get some updated photos. Some of them I have photos already, but from 2 years ago when we first looked at these. But it's pretty much the Elizabeth Street properties I've done, the Lakeport and Road and Michigan Avenue one, and then the St. Paul ones I have information on, obviously. The Merritt one and the two that Mark just mentioned I've started on as well. The others I have some info on, but maybe what I'll do is I'll prioritize the ones that I overlap with Holly or Mark next. But those, once I get the photos, I should have that first batch in you. That's about 16 or 17 of them. So a large number of mine are on those streets. In terms of highlights, the two that Mark mentioned, 37 Henrietta is on my list. That's obviously a highlight. We've talked about that one a fair bit. I don't need to go into it. One that is very interesting to me is the 2 Michigan Avenue, which is the one on the corner there down by Martindale Pond. That has a really interesting history. It's one of the earliest houses in that area. It's tied to it's associated with the Andrews family, who had their shipbuilding operation and dry dock right across the street there. They were when the canal was rerouted, they were basically removed, but the family continued to own and live in that house for quite a while afterwards. And even beyond that history of that specific house, that area, I've done a lot of research on, and it's a really there's a really compelling story to that little development in that Lakeport, Michigan area. It involves the Royal Navy and plantations in Jamaica and other things, and part of how the early part of St. Catharines and that sort of overlooked eastern shore of Port Dalhousie. There's a really compelling history there, and the fellow who actually did that development subsequently moved to California, and he's known as the father of what's it called? It's that suburb of L.A., but he Inglewood, father of Inglewood, and he bought 1,000 or so acre ranch in the desert there, and subsequently, as LA boomed, he subdivided it very similarly to how he subdivided this little section of his father-in-law's old farm property in St. Catharines, and became very wealthy as a result of it. He was more fortunate for the boom that of the growth of Los Angeles that he was a visionary. But he sort of is known as the father of Inglewood, California, and he basically with his father with his deceased wife's fortune that she inherited from her father, who was the landowner in there, moved to California and was quite successful there. And his house there was actually designated for quite a while. It was one of those sad stories that got torn down. The house was designated and donated to a hospital that was run by the nuns who'd taken care of the family. They subsequently appealed the designation, had it removed so they could put a new parking lot in for the hospital. And then, ironically, the hospital itself was subsequently torn down to make room for the parking lot for the new football stadium that's there. So, one of those really interesting historic stories. But it's sort of a neat piece of St. Catharines history that I didn't know a lot about till I looked into this. And I actually, a couple of years ago, when I found this, I talked to Brian about it. I always love mentioning things to Brian if I can find something that he hasn't heard of. I think I'm onto something good, and he hadn't heard too much about this story. So I think it's a neat one. I look forward to sharing it with everyone. But it's one that really jumped out at me. Just that house in that area is such an overlooked history in my mind. And then just to sort of follow up on what you said earlier, James, I do have obviously research on the St. Paul Crescent properties. Those were on the registry from a couple of years ago, but as I sort of filled James and Brian in a couple of weeks ago, I was looking to purchase those properties, and since then have been successful in closing on those. And that includes the old firehouse on St. Paul Crescent, and then two old storefronts that are really there's the bones are there to do a really nice adaptive restoration of that, and I look forward to having the opportunity to sort of fill the committee as a whole in on my plans there. But it's an exciting project we're going to have a lot of fun with, and as I've been researching and I've been learning more, I'm actually in touch with the granddaughter of the Voice Art family, and she has a lot of great photos, interior and exterior, of those buildings, and is very interested in what happens to them, in a lot of old documentation. So there's a lot of great information available and some old photos, and I think the museum may have some more. So we're going to be in a position to do a faithful restoration of at least the facade of those buildings, which were at one point very prominent along that St. Paul West corridor. So that's an exciting project that is upcoming.
Wonderful.
So obviously those properties are of considerable interest to me, and when the time is right, without overburdening the poor heritage planner for St. Catharines, we're going to be asking to have those properties designated. I think the all three justify it. So
Yeah.
That's what's going on there. Right. Anything else anyone wants to add about their properties, or any that they've heard about?
One One thing that sort of crossed my mind when I was doing my evaluations on Embassy Road, Embassy Ave, whatever it is, down in Port Dalhousie, and there's a whole block of houses that are the same style, same time period. And is that not something that we should maybe be looking at them as a whole, rather than saying, okay, we're going to do 7.5 Embassy, because those were all structures relating back to what Mark was saying, that were built as housing for the rubber factory workers in Port. And so there's what is there, 3 or 4 of them that are along Ontario Street, and then there's a similar number of them on Embassy Ave. And those, I think, should be looked at as a group, rather than just, cherry picking. Okay, we're going to do 7.5, and the rest of them we don't care about. Because they're really interesting houses,
Yeah, I saw that row as well, and I thought, why did we only pick 7 and 7.5? I don't know what the rationale was for, and I can't remember when they were actually added to the register, but it seemed odd that those were the cherry picked ones, because yeah, there is an entire little street there that are all, I mean, some have been altered a lot more than others, but the form and massing and everything is all there, and they're all pretty much identical. So I don't see a reason why we wouldn't potentially consider them all together, assuming that, when we prioritize all these, that the property if 7 Embassy is going to be ranking high, then I think we should also consider all the others. If 7 Embassy for whatever reason isn't a priority for us, then we'll leave it be for now. But I think if we do end up going the route of pursuing that one, I think it's worth looking at the others as well. I don't see why not.
Because it's next door neighbor to the south of it. I've forgotten what the number on it is. But anyway, it's almost identical to 7.5. I mean, they're like perfect identical twins,
Mhm.
and
Yeah, and
almost in identical condition too.
Yeah, and there are 2 other ones that have been altered a bit more, but they're same exact design. They've just been reclad, I think, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, it's interesting to have 4, and they're also just unique looking buildings. They're not really like anything else that I can think of in the city. So I'd be really curious to know a little bit more about those properties, and why do they look that way? What was the rationale for it? Because it's very specific. So I just wonder what was going on there.
I mean, the thing I found interesting about them was the way that they had sort of broken the roof line. The gable goes up and then it truncates, but then behind it rises back up again. So you've got almost like this step effect going in.
Yeah.
And really heavy wooden porch support brackets and stuff. I mean, they're totally unique.
Yeah, I'll share my screen just in case Mark and Robert and Andrew aren't able to, because I have it pulled up.
I know the block of buildings. Absolutely. I've admired them for years.
Because I think Mark and I were doing those. Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah, so this is 7 and 7.5, but then right next door is almost identical building here at 9. Spitting image, basically. So I'm not sure why one was cherry picked and the others weren't. And then these 2 here are the same but have been reclad. So this one looks like stucco, and then this one's obviously just vinyl siding, probably. Well, actually, this one is a little bit different. So it's 3 in a row actually that.
And then the buildings that you can see behind out on Ontario Street, they're rubber factory buildings as well, and they're the same style.
It is the same batch on Ontario Street side.
Yep. And they were all probably built in the 1890s, early 1900s, specifically for the rubber factory. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. So we have. Yeah, and these it looks like have been, so obviously vinyl on there, stucco on this one, vinyl on the other one. So we know at some point they would have had, they would have looked like the 2 at 7 and 9. But still, it's really interesting.
And you see what I mean about the gable there, that it's cut off and then it steps up behind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm. I'm guessing the one that's different on the back has been modified. It would have looked like that originally.
Hmm.
Yeah, this is a very unique block of buildings here.
Absolutely.
Now, because the rubber factory, I think, was owned by some Toronto businessmen at the time, it sort of makes me wonder if it was a Toronto architectural firm that might have designed those houses. But I don't know. We'd have to do research on them to find out.
Mm-hmm.
And Andrew, I thought your story about the house at 2 Michigan is interesting because it's those type of stories that not everybody's going to know about. But if they're included if you're in your evaluation forms, if you see, or if you know more about a property and you're able to flesh more of that information out, I can at least, because I'm going to be looking at all the evaluations, and so my evaluation isn't going to be the same as yours because
Yeah.
I don't know all of that information, but I can at least, when I look at the scores, I can say, oh, Andrew rated it this because of that story, and I should take that into account and make sure that that story is accounted for. So, so that's what I plan to do, and that was the goal of making sure that we had multiple points of
Mhm.
view, so we can kind of take the best points from everybody and make sure that we're evaluating them properly, right, and not missing anything.
If I'm remembering correctly, that one was purchased by the rubber company from the Andrews family. They were the next owners of it, so there is that tie-in uh, there. And I have tons of info. I just sort of fell in love with that story and did a deep dive on it. But in terms of the ones on Embassy and Ontario Street, I'm a big believer that there's cumulative value there, and I know it's not really reflected in the Ontario Heritage Act, but I think that's a grave oversight. I think that each one of those 7 buildings becomes more valuable by virtue of having the other ones in proximity with it. And I think if if you protect 1 or 2 of them, they're going to be devalued by the other ones disappearing. But it's something I think just in terms of the overall perspective, we gotta, as the heritage community's got to shift our focus and start to account for those things because that little cluster is more special than any one of the individual buildings. So just pontificating a little bit, but it's important to me. And any others to mention, anyone?
Oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I just, through the chair again, the 38 Geneva Street that was an add-on for me. That's the one at the 5 Points corner at Queenston and Geneva. Shouldn't that be part of the new Heritage District proposal?
Yeah, so through the chair, it was one of those properties. Right now, it's right on the border. So one side of Geneva Street is in the boundary, and the other side isn't. And that's just you have to draw a line on the map somewhere, right? So my thinking was that if that property were to be, if we determined that it was significant, it would at least be individually designated. The other thing that we could do potentially when we start working with the consultant is those properties that are kind of on the periphery. They might say, "Yep, include that," right? As much as we've provided them a boundary that we'd like them to work with, it's a fuzzy boundary. They're able to kind of manipulate it if they feel that it's appropriate, and I think that it would be appropriate if we felt that it should be included. So it's something that I considered as well, and that's why originally I actually forgot to send it out to the group because I had it on a map previously as within the boundary, and then I must have removed it and then forgot to account for that. So yeah, I certainly understand that, and I think it's interesting with that property too, where it's only 38 Geneva that's listed. The actual corner part, which to me is actually the more interesting part, and more architecturally kind of significant part, is not. And so I'm not sure what the rationale was for that, but it might be a property that we want to look at as a whole, right, eventually, and maybe that's why we included in the Heritage District. But it's something that's definitely on my radar to talk to the Heritage consultants about when we get that project going.
I'm assuming, and I can only assume from my visit, that the rear portion, 38, is sort of a 3-story and probably residential, and the other portion is 2-story commercial, and that's the part that's left out. But the building as a whole is really quite remarkable. And
Um,
it's almost original condition other than some window inserts and doors and things like that. And
I
it's in
sort of
pretty
had
rough
the
shape too.
I sort of had the feeling that the back end of the building is the older part. The residential part is the older part, and that the Road Warriors part was built subsequently. But I think this corner was originally owned by John Wright, who was an innkeeper. It was Wright's Corner. But then I think this was Richard Collier's property, who had the sawmill over
That's right.
in Centennial Park.
And the building
But
across the street. Yeah. Mhm.
But when the front part of this building was put on in the 1880s, it was a grocery store, and then from at least the 1910s onward, it was a bicycle shop. And now you've got Road Warriors in here, so it's had that long history of being associated with bicycles and
Right.
cycling.
Hmm.
But it's a really nice building.
It's a really lovely building.
That building actually was a couple years ago on the market. I remember as we look at it now, and there was the people who bought it and restored it or renovated it. The interior too. They fortunately enhanced some of the remaining character inside rather than drywalling it over it as some do. So the interior has some attractive features and character to it as well. And I know a realtor who knows the owners of that building, or the people who were trying to sell it 2 years ago. I don't think they were able to sell it, but the fact that they took the care to to enhance it rather than gloss over it suggests they may have some affection for the character and history of it.
Yeah.
The cast iron pillars that you see on the corner, and there's one on the other side as well. I think it's nice that it's one of the early uses of cast iron structural features in this city, and I think that's pretty much dating the building to about the kind of the mid 1870s time period. There's two other buildings on St. Paul that have cast iron features like this. So one is the old Grand Hotel building, which is right across from the MTO building. And then there's what used to be the Imperial Bank building, like at the top of James Street. And the whole front facade of that building is cast iron.
I believe 37 Ontario as well has a cast iron.
Oh yeah, that's right. It does.
Yeah.
Now, the fact that one cast iron pillar is offset, does that suggest that the storefront was recessed a little bit? Is that underneath part built out later, do you think, or is that like did the facade go from pillar to pillar, or do you think that's it is as it was? Because you see the other metal pillar is right on the corner by the sidewalk.
I don't know. I mean, it could have been pushed out because I've always had the impression that building was sort of built to follow almost the concession lines of the city, that funny 65-degree angle.
Mm-hmm.
That it wasn't, which is why it sort of looks like a parallelogram instead of being a perfectly rectangular structure. So yeah, it could have been that corner has been popped out.
Maybe it was just an overhang before of some kind, but
yeah,
we
exactly.
hope to see like structurally what was above it.
Yeah,
it could have been rebuilt as well, because I mean, I know the top looks maybe a touch more weathered. The brick does look different from this angle, at least, right?
yeah.
So it could have been maybe torn down and rebuilt as it was. Too.
Yeah, there's definitely different mortar has been used, and even compared to the side here, right? It's very different.
I think it was probably rebuilt, or there were some pillars or something holding up that corner before. That's my guess. And I know
those
big
windows sort of look like they might be maybe more like 1890s style rather than 1870s or 1860s.
Mhm. Those pillars might not be original. They could have been put in when that front was rebuilt as well. I don't know. We'd have to look back on some photos here.
Yeah, and I imagine because of where it is, because it's a pretty prominent intersection, hopefully there might be some photos available of it.
Because I can't see that that angle was there unless it was like for a site triangle where they needed it, right? To be on that angle up on the corner.
Yeah. But yeah, I do think it's a fascinating building, and when I noticed that 38 Geneva was the part that was actually protected, I thought, why when this was added, whenever that was, and I can't remember when it was, I thought, didn't they look next door and see what was there? Because that's a fascinating building. And so just curious to see, or you just ask those types of questions, right? When you see those types of things. But I think it's a fascinating little property, and yeah, whether it's included in the Heritage District or we decide to pursue it individually, I think it's a building that definitely, merits protection, right? So
Well, let's just designate 30 at Geneva and demolish the 2 Queenston Street part.
May I add something about 38 Geneva? Just on the, I'm going to put restoration in quotes on the outside because I saw maybe 2 or 3 years ago when they were repairing the backside. I know that they didn't have proper masons doing that, and they were just filling in voids with, cement mortar and just like slopping in bricks. And you can see that along the whole side, and especially on the bottoms from just deterioration from salts and things like that. It's not doing any favors locking in the moisture of those bricks. So we'll just have to monitor that one over the next few years to see if it's going to cause more damage than actually having bricks, the joints being loose, right? Sometimes it's better for it to breathe that way and do it properly than slap on some cement.
It looks as though that building has sustained some vehicular impacts as well over the years, or some damage that's probably being inappropriately remedied. But again, a great building.
Definitely.
So, Mark, just because you joined us a little bit late, so we were talking at the beginning about kind of schedule, and in terms, I know I mentioned in the email to you that the goal would be to try to get things done for Christmas.
Yeah.
I think the goal really is to try to get as much as you can done for Christmas, and then after that point, let the group know what you weren't able to get to, because Holly's sort of in the same boat. She's a little behind right now, and so once we have an idea of which properties you guys weren't able to get to, we can kind of divide them amongst the group and see if we can, before the next meeting in January, which is January 18th or 19th, we'll be able to, tackle those properties if you're not able to get to them in time, and somebody will be able to do them. So
Yeah.
just try your best, essentially, and somebody will pick up the pieces if we need to.
For sure. Yeah, with the rubrics, without going into like heavy deep dives like to Michigan, maybe probably won't get that much done, but I'll definitely be able to assess all of them on the list like easily by
Okay,
Christmas.
great.
Like by next week, I'll have them at least the rubrics done, right? And then we can maybe as a group narrow down on like some deep history on some of these. As far if I can't get because I think there's definitely overlap on some of these properties. Some may have some information, some may not. So we'll just combine it all together in the next meeting.
And I fully expect that, there's going to be a property that maybe has an amazing history that none of us know about. And that's just going to be the case. And, it's unfortunate, but we just have to kind of try our best, right? And accept that, you can't know everything about every property. And we don't have the time or resources really to do that. And that's okay. It's just, the way this works. And as long as we try our best, and, I think from what it sounds like, I think the cream is going to rise to the top, just based on the conversations we're having right now. And so, yeah, there might be some properties that are on the fringes or on the like maybe, and maybe we'll have to figure out, okay, let's do a little bit more digging to find out, is there more here to allow for a little bit more separation between some of those kind of middle of the road properties, but we'll cross that road when we get to it. I think once I start compiling all the scores, I think it's going to be pretty obvious that there's going to be certain kind of levels or tiers of properties, and that's just based on my own evaluations. I've noticed like there's certain properties where I'm like, yeah, that's a definite, like just in my gut it's like, yeah, I know that's going to be a good one. And then there's a bunch where I'm like, I can't find a reason to score them very high, or even score them beyond the single digits, and that's okay too, right? And so I think we're going to end up with these tiers, and we're probably going to talk about those tiers at the next meeting, and hopefully have a list that we feel really good about that we can bring to the Heritage Committee at the end of January. So
Yeah, and I definitely went down a rabbit hole on that one, and if that it's not advisable, it's not practical for what we're doing right now, but even the ones that are lower rated, I think as long as we take a little closer look at them at the appropriate time, just to make sure we're not missing something, that's a sort of a hidden gem for some reason, then but we have to prioritize somehow, right? And I honestly think the big ones will be most of 99% of the time. There's going to be some evidence of that at this stage that they are going to be the big ones.
Well, one of the properties that I looked at was the one down on Simpson Road, and it was a perfect little gem of an late 1860s, early 1870s, like a clapboard farmhouse. And the owners who have the building now, they've preserved the bones of the house, but then they've also done some really peculiar things with it. Like they've put that fake stone along the bottom of it that everybody likes to use these days. But they've carried it up to a certain point on the one wall, and then there was a projecting, like a bay window, like a turret, 2 stories on the side wall, and they put that stone all the way up on the outside of that turret, and then they stuck a garage onto the side of it. And it's like, why did you do that? It was a perfectly good house. It was a beautiful house before. So, I'm sort of, well, I'd like to give it a higher score, but look what you've done to it. It looks nice. It's been gentrified, but
those are always make me cringe. The one I hate the most is like, well, we can repair the brick, or we can just slap a lot of paint on it. Let's do that instead.
That's right. Paint it black.
Who else has 24 Queenston on their list? The former Little Import.
That's me.
Yeah. Have you taken a look at that one?
The Queenston ones were the ones I only touched on, but they were sort of next on my list. I sort of am intrigued by that Queenston strip there.
Yeah, because I know that we were just talking about bricks, so that and you painting bricks or just slap some, faux stone over them. And this one, it's all exposed.
Yeah,
it does have a more industrial style block building attached to the rear of it.
Yeah,
right. That goes down to, I think, Riordan, or no, that is Riordan, I think, on that corner. But go to the next street. But it does have significance of, I think, that Queenston corridor. Like it's you drive into Queenston and there it is. It always has been there. It was covered in paint before. And the only thing about this one is that it's probably been sandblasted a couple of times. So the bricks are now vulnerable because the fired face is gone on that too. Like on the whole building, right? It's, if you look up close, it's really pitted. The bricks, like they don't have there's no good brick on that place. The mortar is still good. I mean, it's old live mortar from 1850, but it's not well preserved.
Yeah, that's looking at it. That's the thing about that one, is it really looks like there was something. It was very significant, but it's just heavily compromised, both in terms of condition, but also modifications and so on. But it's I'm looking forward to learning a little more about that one because I think there's probably a pretty cool story there.
Yeah, it was part of a block of buildings, like at least two or three others.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's just like parking lot now. I think it's for lease, like a parking lot is for lease. I'm guessing for someone's vehicles, or if a lot, it's fenced, gated,
Mm-hmm.
the side of it. And that one's an interesting one because of how compromised it is,
Mm-hmm.
how vulnerable it is to water now and the elements.
Mm-hmm.
And right now they just have a bunch of like clear boxes that they fastened to the bricks, and I don't know the purpose of it right now. I don't know if is that in the in a Google search right now. If not, I have a photo I can show you.
If you have the photo, it'd be great to see. The one I remember driving by, but I don't remember exactly what it looks like. On Google Maps, it goes back to October 2022, which is when it was sort of in.
It's not doing
There you
anything.
go.
Giving
Under
any
modification, yeah.
No, I can't really see that. Can you see that? It's kind of blocking my screen. That's funny.
Oh,
no, you can't really see it right now.
It's this one here, right, Mark? On the screen?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
it does
then,
not look like
so,
that.
So this is what it looked like a couple years ago. This is November 2021, and then this is as of October.
Yeah.
So they removed all the paint, but then it oddly looks like it was in better shape when there was all the paint on it.
Yeah, it looked, but and it looks better in the next photo than it does now. That's for sure. I don't know. Okay.
Well, and you can even see there's, this window was bricked in at some point.
Mm-hmm. That's the thing. So many compromises, but just sort of have a hint that there was something pretty cool there at some point.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to send you the photo right now, James.
Okay, great.
So hopefully you get it, but it's not looking so hot right now.
Like a sugar cube that's out in the rain. One way people have described that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah. Here we go. You'll know why I said oh yeah when I just trying to see if there's a good way to open this up and share it with everybody. Okay, here we go.
Oh my.
I don't know what to say about it right now, actually.
That is very curious.
Yeah.
Just all wrong.
See, that's new since I drove by a while back. It looks like it's just a design feature. I don't think those things have any practical purpose. They're just
No, it's just affixed to it.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, I tried to see if there was any spot for like an insert or something, but there is none.
Yeah.
And I thought it was to cover some like some spots that were maybe very deteriorated, but it doesn't look like it is. Because there's worse spots on the building that are not covered. So
Mm-hmm.
And it's not for that reason. I don't know what they're thinking there though.
I wonder if some of those window and door openings have been recently modified, because in the one Google Street View that James showed, you could see there was a pile of red brick that was sort of out by the roadside. So I wonder if they've been knocking brick out to enlarge these openings. which is
Yeah,
a no-no.
if I remember correctly, if you go back to the earlier,
Yeah, that
yeah,
window on
the
the left
earlier Google Street View, you'll see
was a
that
normal window, yeah.
the one on the corner had been, the original window had been replaced um, with those sort of kitty corner square windows. But yeah, there you go. The one to the left
There it is.
was the
Yeah.
original opening, but that's now been modified to be
That's
to be the same squared off window as those newer ones. And then
So it
and
looks
then-
like sorry, Andrew, I don't mean to interrupt.
Yeah, no,
The corner windows here, this is a picture, even though it's blurry, it's from 2007. So
yeah.
it looks like these corner windows are at least now almost 20 years old. So that window was intact as of 2020.
Mm-hmm. And then another squared off window was added to the right of the one on the side street there.
Right, yeah. So it looks like it's boarded up here in 2022. So it means they just added that square window within the last year.
Mhm.
And the other boarded up one on the right side of the image, that
Yeah.
was opened up for another square window put in there where there had been none before.
Yeah, no, there's nothing here. Yeah, it's
My goodness.
And like I say, in this shot, you can see the pile of brick that they removed too. So
Mhm.
oh yeah.
back there, yeah.
Well,
Yeah, this might be one of those buildings where the integrity score is going to be important. So we might
Yeah.
find that it has, maybe it checks off a lot of boxes, but at the end of the day, like how much how much is even there that, is original fabric really, right? Or original kind of almost every window opening's been modified.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And as Mark said, that's sort of the last remaining piece of what was an interesting little
Yeah.
strip of probably similar buildings along there at one point.
hmm
It's all now parking lot or whatever. Well, I think we kind of lumped item 7.1 and 7.2 together, which is progress updates and discussion of specific properties. So we'll write that down off as us being good multitaskers, and it goes on to next steps. And as James said, the goal is to have our batch in by Christmas if we can, and hopefully we'll have a good chunk of them, at least we'll say at this point, for the January meeting to start to look at in terms of the prioritization and maybe make some adjustments to the prioritization based on different perspectives that we have, and start to talk about where we go from there. But that's exciting. It's nice to know that we're sort of getting close to the point where we can start to move on to phase two, which is to start choosing which of these justify designation. And it's important work. I know there's a number of heritage committees around Niagara that are in the same boat. Sarah of the Grimsby Heritage Advisory Committee, and they're going through the same process. And now, although she likes to talk about how much further ahead they are than us, and so
we also are working on a heritage district study though, so that helps.
That's right.
That's a big chunk right there. So
I'll drop that on her when later.
Yeah.
Where's your heritage district study?
Yeah, I just want to stress, I totally get that it's a busy time of year and there's a lot of work and whatnot. So if you don't get your entire list done, it's okay. We can figure things out in January. I'm looking at every property, so at least we know we'll have at least one evaluation for everyone. Hopefully we'll have at least two. Most will have three, but we're not going to have any properties where we have zero. So don't worry too much. I just you're volunteers, and I appreciate all the help that you're putting into this and the work that you're doing. And so just try your best, and we'll kind of sort out where we are after the new year. And yeah, I think, you know, when we meet again in January, it'll be exciting to have kind of a list in front of us, and we'll be able to see, you know, what our work's going to be like for the next year. And I think it'll be exciting to bring this back to the Heritage Committee and let them know kind of the work that we've done. And I think they'll be really interested to see what properties are going to be going forward. And yeah, it's been really, I've really enjoyed this process of kind of going one by one through each property and seeing what we have. Because to be honest, I hadn't done that before. Really, it's always just been a list in front of me, and I've never really had the time to take the time to devote, you know, even if it's just an hour or two to one property. I hadn't been able to do that, so it's been a good project for me to see what we have. And yeah, it's been really enjoyable. So and I hope you're enjoying it as well.
Mhm.
Yeah,
It's fun to take the time to go poke around and look at some of these little gems we haven't seen, and you know, get funny looks from people when you start taking pictures of old buildings. And but yeah, no, it's a lot of fun.
there's another perspective when you get out of your vehicle and take a good look at it when you're walking, right? When you're on your feet and looking at these buildings, it's
Mhm.
definitely another perspective than driving past these buildings for, you know, a few decades and maybe not giving them the attention that they
Mm-hmm.
might need, right?
Mhm.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So anything else anyone wants to say next step? James, you're good there?
No, I'm good as long as everybody knows kind of what they're doing over the next few weeks. And I'll send out an email to make sure that Holly is aware of what we've discussed today and make sure that she knows the schedule and everything. And yeah, we'll kind of go from there. And if, you know, if anything comes up over the next couple weeks, you know, just reach out to me. I'm happy to help you out and figure things out. So yeah.
Yeah. So number 8 is business arriving from the minutes. I don't believe there is any this week. Items of correspondence, again, none. So date of the next meeting, January 19th, 2023. Put it on your calendars. It's going to be a fun one. And now so do we have we now move to the motion to adjourn or to terminate is the favored parlance. Do we have anyone who'd like to make that motion? Or are we stuck together in perpetuity?
I think Mark should do it.
I think Mark should do it, yes.
You got left out of the earlier motion, so yeah. Moved graciously by Mark that the St. Catharines Heritage Advisory Committee Designation Subcommittee meeting be adjourned at 3:16 p.m. on Friday. All in favor? Passes unanimously. We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Okay, great. All. So we do have our Heritage Committee meeting in a couple weeks. So 21st. Totally understand that it's close to Christmas. So and I know Robert mentioned I think that he's unable to attend. But if you're not able to attend, get in touch with me so I can make sure that we have quorum for that day. But I'm still trying to figure out what's going to be on the agenda because it's only been a week since our last meeting, so there's not a lot to discuss quite yet. But I'll sort that out and let you know by next week what's going on.
As I won't be at that meeting, happy holidays, everyone.
Yeah, you as well, Robert.
You too, Robert. Have a great holiday season with your family and friends.
Okay, great. Well, take care all, and have a good weekend.